Hey there YouTube, you are once again tuned in to the Pharaoh's Vessel, and today I'm bringing you a deck profile of my lightsworn deck featuring Judgment Dragon, Punishment Dragon and a variety of different lightsworns and twilightsworns. As you can see, there is also a 3-card extra deck to go with it as well. I'm not going to keep jabbering on and everything else. I'm going to get straight into this deck profile, guys, because I'm quite excited to bring you this one as it was, well, built recently by myself, and it's slow building up, but it gets going, and once it's on the roll then it holds its own pretty well. So yeah, this is the Twilight lightsworn deck. I'm going to start the profile video today, guys, with the extra deck, just so it's only 3 cards and we can get them out of the way pretty quick. So first of all, I like to run Michael the Arch Lightsworn. Unfortunately, I do need to put a tuner in this deck, which is easier. Well, it shouldn't be too bad actually, because I've got enough tuners in the box to pick one out and put one in. But I'm pretty damn sure I need to put one in for this deck so I can run Michael the Arch Lightsworn. But basically, he is a 7-star monster of dragon variety. He's a synchro with an effect. He requires 1 tuner and 1 more non-tuner light monster to bring him out. And once per turn you can pay 1000 life points, then target 1 card in the field, banish the target. When this card is destroyed, you can target any number of other lightsworn monsters in the graveyard, shuffle them into your deck, and if you do, you gain 300 life points for each returning card. During each of your end phases, send the top 3 cards of the deck to the graveyard. Next up we have Minerva the Exalted Lightsworn. She's a fairy type, an XYZ with an effect, and to bring her in you need 2 level 4 monsters. You can detach 1 material from this card, send the top 3 cards of the deck to the graveyard, then draw cards equal to the number of lightsworn cards sent to the graveyard by this effect. If this card is destroyed by battle, or if this card is in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can send the top 3 cards of the deck to the graveyard. Then you can destroy cards on the field up to the number of lightsworn cards sent to the graveyard by this effect. You can only use each effect of Minerva the Exalted Lightsworn once per turn. And finally, Curious the Lightsworn Dominion. It's a link monster which requires 3 monsters with the same attribute but different types to bring her out. If this face-up card is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect while its owner controls it, you can target 1 card in your graveyard, add it to your hand. You can only use each of the following effects of Curious, the Lightsworn Dominion, once per turn. If this card is link summoned, you can send 1 card from your deck to the graveyard. If a card is sent from the deck to the graveyard by an effect, send the top 3 cards of the deck to the graveyard. So that's the extra deck, nice and simple. Don't normally get a chance really to bring it out, but when you do, they have their own little abilities that are pretty good. Like Minerva the Exalted Lightsworn, she's probably the better of the 3 to get onto the field. If you're playing in with the whole link stuff as well, Curious is pretty strong when she gets on the field as well. But yeah, that's the extra deck, guys. Moving on to monsters. So as you probably noticed by now, guys, I like to run quite a lot of monsters and stuff in my decks. I like to have quite bulky decks. So this one's no different. To start us off with, I run 2 copies of Judgment Dragon. It cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned from the hand by having 4 or more lightsworn monsters with different names in the graveyard. You can pay 1000 life points, destroy all other cards on the field. Once per turn during your end phase, send the top 4 cards of the deck to the graveyard. I like to run 1 Punishment Dragon, which does pretty much exactly the same, except for instead of it being lightsworns in the graveyard, it's lightsworns that are banished and removed from play. Once per turn, quick effect, you can pay 1,000 life points and shuffle into the decks all the cards in the graveyard and all face-up banished cards except lightsworn monsters. Once per turn, if your lightsworn monster's effect is activated, send the top 4 cards of the deck to the graveyard. Next up, guys, I run 2 copies of Celestia, Lightsworn Angel. She's a fairy type with light attribute, 5-star monster at 2,300 by 200 defense. When you tribute summon this card by tributing a lightsworn monster, you can send the top 4 cards of a deck to the graveyard, then target up to 2 cards your opponent controls and destroy those targets. I have 1 copy of Gragonlith, the lightsworn dragon. This card gains 300 attack and defense for each lightsworn monster with different names in the graveyard. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. During each of your end phases, send the top 3 cards of the deck to the graveyard. You must control this face-up card to activate and resolve the effect. I run Jain, the twilightsworn general. Just the 1 copy. Once per turn, you can banish 1 lightsworn monster from your hand or graveyard, then target 1 face-up monster on the field. It loses attack and defense equal to the banished monster's level by 300 until the end of this turn. Once per turn, if other lightsworn monster's effect is activated, send the top 2 cards of the deck to the graveyard. I run 2 copies of Garoth, Lightsworn Warrior. Each time a card is sent from the deck to the graveyard by the effect of a lightsworn monster you control, except Garoth, Lightsworn Warrior, send the top 2 cards of the deck to the graveyard, then draw 1 card for each lightsworn monster sent by the card's effect to the graveyard. I run 2 copies of Felis, Lightsworn Archer. Cannot be normal summon set, must be special summoned by a card effect. If the card is sent from the deck to the graveyard by a monster effect, special summon it. You contribute this card, then target 1 monster your opponent controls, destroy that target, then send top 3 cards of the deck to the graveyard. I like to run 2 copies of Lyla, the twilightsworn enchantress, who states that once per turn when a spell or trap card or effect is activated, quick effect, you can banish 1 lightsworn monster from your hand or graveyard, then target 1 face-up spell trap on the field and destroy it. Once per turn, if your other lightsworn monster's effect is activated, send the top 3 cards of the deck to the graveyard. And to accompany her, I play 2 copies of Lyla, the lightsworn sorceress. You could target 1 spell trap your opponent controls. This card's battle position cannot be changed until the end of your next turn. Also change this card you control from face-up attack to face-up defense. And if you do, destroy that target. Once per turn, during your end phase, send the top 3 cards of the deck to the graveyard. I run 2 copies of Shire, Lightsworn Spirit. This card gains 300 attack for each lightsworn monster with a different name in the graveyard. During each of your end phases, send the top 2 cards of the deck to the graveyard. There's 2 copies of Aurkus, Lightsworn Druid. Lightsworn monsters everywhere cannot be targeted by spells, traps, or card effects during each of your end phases. Send the top 2 cards of the deck to the graveyard. You must control this card face up to activate and to resolve the effect. Sorry guys, you're going to have to bear with me, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning here. I run 1 copy of Ryko, Twilightsworn Fighter. If the card is normal summoned or flipped face up, you can banish 1 lightsworn monster from your hand or graveyard. Banish 1 card on the field. Once per turn, if other lightsworn monster's effect is activated, send the top 3 cards of the deck to the graveyard. There's 2 copies of Ryko the lightsworn hunter. It's got a flip effect that you can target one card in the field, destroy the target, if any. Also, after that, send the top 3 cards of the deck to the graveyard. I run 1 copy of Lumina, lightsworn summoner. Once per turn you can discard 1 card, then target 1 level 4 or lower lightsworn monster in your graveyard. Special summon that target. Once per turn during your end phase, send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. And to finish off with the monsters, guys, 1 copy of Minerva, lightsworn maiden. When this card is normal summoned, you can add 1 light dragon type monster from your deck to your hand, whose level is less or equal to the total number of lightsworn monsters with different names in the graveyard. If this card is sent from your hand or deck to the graveyard, send the top card of your deck to the graveyard. During each of your end phases, send the top 2 cards of your deck to the graveyard. So basically, as you can see, the deck works so that you get judgment and punishment out as quick as possible by throwing cards into the graveyard and into banished areas as well. There's a lot of spells and traps to go through as well, and you'll see roughly how the deck works shortly after that. But that was, for now guys, that was the monsters. Moving on, next we have the spells. So for the spells, guys, just starts off with, I like to run 2 copies of Realm of Light. Basically, each time, it's a field card, each time a card is sent from your deck to the graveyard, place 1 shine counter on this card. All lightsworn monsters gain 100 attack for each shine counter on this card. If this card be destroyed by a card effect, remove 2 shine counters from the card instead. So it works in unison quite well with your lightsworns. There's 1 copy of Lightsworn Sanctuary. It's continuous. Once per turn you can send 1 lightsworn monster from your hand to the graveyard, then target 1 other lightsworn monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. Each time a card is sent from a deck to the graveyard, place 1 shine counter on this card. If a lightsworn card you control will be destroyed by a card effect, you can remove 2 shine counters from your side of the field for each of those lightsworn cards instead. If you're struggling to get them out, guys, 2 copies of Charge of the Light Brigade, which allows you to send the top 3 cards of the deck to the graveyard and add 1 level 4 or lower lightsworn from the deck to your hand. Also, I run 3 copies of Solar Recharge. Discard 1 lightsworn monster, draw 2 cards, then send the top 2 cards of the deck to the graveyard. I have 1 copy of Twilight Twin Dragons, which basically states that if you control Punishment Dragon, you can target 1 Judgment Dragon in your graveyard and add it to your hand, and send the top 4 cards of the deck to the graveyard. If this card is sent from the deck to the graveyard by a lightsworn monster's effect, you can target 1 Punishment Dragon in your graveyard and add it to your hand. Then banish the top 4 cards of your deck. Excuse me. I run 1 copy of Constellar Belt. The activation of light monsters' effects cannot be negated. There is 2 copies of Monster Reborn, 1 Tribute to the Doomed, and to finish off, 1 Silent Doom. So there you have it, guys. That's your spells. Or that's my spells, rather. That's what I run in the deck. Seems to work. Has a little bit of backup in there for the lightsworns. It mixes and matches them, brings them back and forth, and obviously you've got your Monster Reborns to get back the bigger cards that you need. So coming up next, we have the traps. So guys, your traps. I like to run 1 copy of Lightsworn Barrier. It's a nice continuous card. When a Lightsworn monster you control is targeted for an attack, you can send the top 2 cards of the deck to the graveyard, then target the attacking monster, negate the attack. I like to run 2 copies of Twilight Cloth, which basically states that target 1 face-up monster you control, banish any number of Lightsworn monsters from your graveyard, and if you do, that monster gains 200 attack and defense for each monster banished by this effect, until the end of the turn. If this card is sent from the deck to the graveyard by a lightsworn monster's effect, you can activate this effect. This turn, lightsworn monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. It does need a little bit of defensive kick, so we'll run 3 copies of Mirror Force. I also have 1 Storming Mirror Force and 3 copies of Sakuretsu Armor, as well as 1 copy of Spellbinding Circle. All cards that help defend, obviously Mirror Force, when your opponent's monster declares an attack, you destroy all opponent's attack position monsters. Sakuretsu Armor destroys a monster that's trying to attack. Spellbinding Circle stops it dead in its tracks. And basically it can't change its battle position. Storm Mirror Force has a beautiful little effect. So yeah, they all work. And to finish it off with your traps, 1 Floodgate Trap Hole. When your opponent summons a monster, change that monster to face down defense position. Monsters change to face down defense position by the effect cannot change their battle positions. So that, guys, is the traps that I run in the deck. And this here has been my Twilight lightsworn deck. Like I said, it is a bit heavy with monster spells and traps. I believe that it works well in unison with each other. Basically the spells help the cards flip back and forth the graveyard. Their own effects normally have a tendency to throw quite a lot of cards out, so you need cards to bring them back as well, otherwise you'll run out of cards pretty quick. Hence why it's such a chunky deck, so you don't actually run out of cards in a hurry. But yeah, that's it for this one, guys. If you haven't already done so, if you scroll down slightly, click on like and subscribe, and I'll hopefully catch you in the next video. Stay tuned for now though, don't click off the video just yet, because you're going to love what comes next. So guys, just to finish off this deck profile, as I've said in the last couple of deck profiles, within the next few that there was going to be a little competition, and this is it. You have the perfect opportunity to win one of my favourite Dark Magicians, which I believe is in the ultra rare form. It has the code of Yankee Uniform Charlie Bravo Echo November 001, if you know your phonetic alphabet. And I'm also throwing in this. It's only a little something. It's a pendant, and it's the Millennium Ring, as worn in the TV show by Yami Bakura. Also held by Marek at one point, if I remember correctly, as well, when he took it, etc, etc. But yeah, this is the Millennium Ring, and this is what's up for grabs. So, your question, which I will post in the description below as well, is as follows. In the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game, there are 2 monsters that have a high number of different artwork. Who has the second highest number of different artwork in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game, saga, however you want to look at it? I'll post the question in the link below, guys, and obviously, once again, if you haven't already done so, scroll down slightly, click on that like and subscribe button. Give us a like, give us a nudge, drop us a comment if you like. The competition will stand for 1 month from today. In 1 month, I will declare all names who give the right answer will go into the hat. It'll be shuffled up, and a name will be drawn. Whoever wins will get these 2 fantastic little tokens. But for now, I'm going to leave it there, and I'll catch you all again soon.